Okay, so we're back. We're going to talk more about parallel and perpendicular lines. Okay, so we left off talking about parallel, so we're going to talk about perpendicular. Two lines that are perpendicular if their slopes are opposite reciprocals. Okay, so this one's a little more difficult. We're saying M1 is equal to the negative 1 over M2. So basically what this comes down to is if your slope is 2, its perpendicular slope is a negative 1/2, or vice versa. If it's negative 1/2, then it's 2, or 1/2, it's negative 2, depending on what you have. Okay, they can have the same y-intercept. That would just mean they cross on the same spot on the y-axis. That's all that means. So perpendicular means opposite reciprocal slopes. Okay. So again, lines cross from forming a right angle. Okay, that's what perpendicular means. And they cross only at one point. So we're talking lines, there's no curve, so therefore it only crosses at one point. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and talk about classifying. So now that we know what parallel and perpendicular means, okay, again, parallel, same slope, perpendicular means that they're opposite reciprocals. We're going to talk about how to classify. Okay, so are the graphs 4y equals negative 5x plus 12 and y equals 4/5 x minus 8 parallel, perpendicular, or neither? So how do we classify those? Well, what we need to look at is what their slopes are. So it means we got to get it into y equals mx plus b format. Well, the first one's not. So we're going to have to divide everything by 4, which means dividing 5 by 4 gives us a negative 5/4 x, and then 12 divided by 4 is going to give us a positive 3. So now when we look at these, now we have it in the y equals mx plus b. So this first one, m1, is a negative 5/4. m2 is a positive 4/5. So clearly they are not parallel because they're not the same. So it's clearly not parallel, which means that it's perpendicular or neither. Okay, neither would mean that it's not perpendicular, like maybe they cross, but they're crossing at not a 90-degree angle, or they're actually the same line. Okay, well, since they're not the same slopes, they can't be the same line. So it has to be that they cross maybe at a 45-degree angle or something like that. So we look at it and say, all right, well, negative, positive. So there's the opposite. Now if I take the 5/4 and I flip it, I get the 4/5. So then the opposite, meaning that it was negative, now becomes positive. The question is that what M2 is? And that answer would be yes. So since it is indeed perpendicular. So these two lines are perpendicular. Okay, so again, we know that because their slopes are opposite reciprocals, and that's all we need to know. Okay, so example 3 here, you have 2y equals negative 3x plus 6 and y equals 2/3 x plus 2. Is that parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Again, parallel means same slope, perpendicular means opposite reciprocal, and neither means that it's just different slopes, or it has the same slope and same y-intercept. That would mean crosses right on top of each other. Okay, so let's write an equation of a perpendicular line. So now that we've talked about how to recognize which one's which, let's talk about how to write. So again, we need this point. We need to know that it's perpendicular. But then again, in perpendicular parallel lines, all we need is the slope. So M1 has a slope of 1/3. Apologize. Okay, 1/3, which means that M2, our slope, is going to be the opposite reciprocal. So this one was positive, so we need negative, and the reciprocal of 1/3 is 3. So now we know our slope. Our slope is this, and really we're done with this. Okay, we're done with that. Okay, so we're going to pull that point down, and again, point slope form, because we have a point and we have the slope. So we have y minus 4 equals a negative 3 times x minus 2. and we just simplify, because I would like for you to write this in slope-intercept, but actually it says just write an equation. So therefore this would be good enough. We're going to go ahead and simplify this down though. Okay, so negative 3x and then a positive now 6. We're going to add 4 to both sides and we get y equals a negative 3x plus 10. Okay, so we have opposite reciprocals for the slopes. Doesn't matter about the y-intercept at that case. You're just done. Okay, so got it, number 3. You have 1,8 is where the line passes through. It's perpendicular to the graph of y equals 2x plus 1. Go ahead and write that. And again, I wrote in there in slope-intercept, so go ahead and put that down in the slope-intercept. Okay, so let's look at real-world problems. An architect uses software to design the ceiling of a room. The architect needs to enter an equation that represents a new beam. The new beam will be perpendicular to the existing beam, which is represented by the red line. The new beam will pass through the corner, represented by the blue point. What is the equation that represents the new beam? Okay, so that's on page 330. Okay, so to get you started, how we're going to do this is we're going to first look at page 330 and we're going to talk about what that equation is. So what we want to do is we want to find 2 points on that picture. So one point, as I can see, is going to be 3,6. Okay, so if you look there, you'll find it crosses a little crosshair there at 3,6. The next one looks to be 6,4. So you have 2 points, which means now what we got to figure out is what our slope is. So this is M1, the original. So I'm going to take 4 minus 6. I'm going to put that over 6 minus 3. And I'm going to get a negative 2 over a positive 3, which means M2 is going to be a 3 over 2 slope. Okay, which means that's what we need to focus on. Okay, that's the equation, that's the slope we're going to use. Now the blue point they provided you looks to be crossing at 1210. So we're going to look at 1210, and there's your point. So there's your slope, and there's your point. I want you to go ahead and finish that problem on your own. Okay, so that's it for this lesson. You have a pre-quiz on Edmodo for this. You're going to take, and then you'll have a quiz in class after your worksheet. Again, see your resources for all that information.